Off regularly.
Why?
Well, here we are, Gold Derbyites. The Hollywood project is complete for Christopher Nolan, who has taken out his film, at least Oppenheimer, has taken out Best Picture and 7 Oscars. But boy, like I just need to get to see it properly. I need to make sure I'm wearing my safety glasses to see all those Oscar wins. Oh my goodness, so many Oscar wins. So many, like, oh my goodness, 7 Oscars for Oppenheimer. It came to the Oscars at Concord, and that's all practical effects here at Gold Derby. None of this VFX stuff. Anyway, I am joined here for our post-Oscar show I'm joined here by Joyce Eng, Ray Richmond, and Christopher Rosen. Joyce, how did you find today's Oscars?
Well, the ceremony itself was okay. It peaked obviously with I'm Just Ken, of course. Loved all the winners. Bafta really thriving tonight. I'm really happy for Bafta because everyone was dragging its name through the mud last year because it went over 8 above the line and trying to discredit them. And they came back with a vengeance, nailed every category except for visual effects. And that's only because the Oscars did not nominate Poor Things and Bafta did not nominate Godzilla -1. So very happy for Bafta. But yeah, I thought it was hilarious that the show couldn't start on time because the people weren't there yet because of the traffic backup.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, because there was a protest. So it was the people had to bring out the golf carts to transport people.
I was going to say, I know I'm familiar with things running long, but not actually running long at the beginning, where they couldn't actually even start the thing. I didn't realize there was even a protest. They covered that up pretty well.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And Christopher, speaking before we went live, you are giddy about tonight's Oscar show. Fill us in. How did you find the whole proceedings?
An absolute delight. First of all, it's over. It was over early. This is the first time in the history of my life I think the Oscars ended.
It started late and it was over early.
And it started 7 minutes late. So immediate win. Best set of winners, I think, since like 2008, maybe 2009, I guess, right? Like that era. I don't know. I just love the winners. The show is incredible. I'm Just Ken, obviously, maybe the best thing I've ever seen on an Oscars. Somehow I was saying to my wife as we were watching it, I was like, I was so excited for that to happen. And it exceeded my expectations like tenfold. It was so much better than I even thought was possible. It was incredible. Just a great show. I thought it was great. I didn't think, I mean, if I'm looking for negatives, I was like, I didn't think Kimmel was as good as he had been previously as a host. I thought his jokes weren't as sharp, but I thought the whole show and a lot of the presenter banter I thought was actually pretty fun as well. So I was way in. I just love this. It's great.
And like, I don't disagree with you about Kimmel. The good thing with him is he's like, even if he's not on his best night, you're going to get something pretty reliable and good that moves the show along and stuff like that. So that's like, maybe even if it wasn't his strongest night, it highlights the strength of choosing someone like Kimmel in that role who's comfortable on stage, who isn't going to just completely bomb or ruin the show or get in its way. So, so I thought Kimmel served it well and maybe like shows why it wasn't like a big swing picking him to host, but it helped deliver a great show. Ray, what are your thoughts?
In terms of Kimmel, I thought he started a little slowly with his monologue, but he kind of built up steam as he went along. I think, at what age do you tell a screenplay it was adapted is one of the great lines I've ever seen at an Oscars. I love I'm Just Ken was turning that into this giant show-stopping Busby Berkeley 65 dancers number was phenomenal. I mean, I was really looking forward to seeing Ryan Gosling there, and completely exceeded my expectations. A lot of great acceptance speeches, beginning with Davine Joy Randolph, who gave an amazing acceptance, even if you excuse the fact that she didn't really mention anyone that had to do with the holdovers, it was all really about her past and and her journey, which I guess is okay. Although she probably maybe should have thanked Alexander Payne. I don't know. But no, I just thought it was that there were a few negatives. I think it was tough to read a lot of the names in the in memoriam segment. I'm not sure that they're going to turn that into an interpretive dance again anytime soon. But, for the most part, really sprightly, really, I agree with Christopher. Sprightly, really fast moving, really bouncy and fun, and some really poignant moments like the 20 Days in Mariupol director's speech, which was very powerful. Everybody that should have won did win for the most part.
No, I think it's a really good point. Something that I thought, like Oppenheimer, the big winner of the night, and taking out 7, Chris Nolan, Best Director. There was such a nice, he has been one of the most prolific and iconic directors of the past couple of decades, and it was so nice to see him have a film that has now entered that Best Picture canon. He is now a Best Director Oscar winner. So I thought that was really cool, and to see sort of the wins come along with that. But also, big night for Poor Things. And Poor Things takes out 4 awards. And we can talk about all its wins later, because I feel like a month or 2 ago, Poor Things was looking like it might end up missing out on all those Oscars and being like the sort of the bridesmaid in a lot of categories. But it took out 4, most noteworthy of which Emma Stone upsetting Lily Gladstone. It was a neck and neck race between the Stones. Emma Stone took it out. Joyce, what do you think got Emma Stone over the line in one of the tightest Best Actress races we've had in a number of years?
I think it's just she has the stronger film, and we've seen that over and over again, not just in Best Actress, but in a lot of categories. And we knew for Killers of the Flower Moon, it was Lily or bust, and she won SAG, which was a huge boost for her, but it was not win competitive in any other category, whereas Poor Things was. Even if some people were flip-flopping between that and Barbie in the design categories, and that and Maestro and makeup and hairstyling, but it was never lower than 2 in those categories, whereas Killers was in other categories, and Poor Things was definitely top 5 in Best Picture, and I would say Killers was not, even though I believe Killers was 5th in the odds, I think, in the end. But I think that's kind of hope dicting, because you have Marty's legacy, but it was clearly the weaker film, and Poor Things was a stronger film. And I think that once it won those 3 awards in a row, I was like, Emma's gonna win. I was already feeling good about all the BAFTA winners when Boy and the Heron won early on in the night, because I was like, BAFTA's showing up. And then I knew Oppenheimer would lose sound because Zone won BAFTA, sound at BAFTA. So, and I think, that it's also, I think, it's scubjective, but that Emma's performance, I think it's not even about the time, her screen time, which everyone debates whether or not Lily is lead or supporting, but I think there's just a lot of range in Emma's performance too. I think it's kind of easier for people to be wowed by what she does. Lily's is, she has less screen time, obviously, and it's a little bit more subtle as well. So, but I think primarily it's the strength of Poor Things carrying her through.
Yeah. Ray, you're nodding. Do you agree with that assessment of what got?
Yeah. Obviously I wish I had that over again, that I could, I had Emma all season, because I'm just like, I remember walking out of seeing Poor Things for the first time and just thinking that was a performance, and then of course, after several weeks and months, you talk yourself out of it and you're like, well, who really knows? It starts fading a little bit. And then after Lily won SAG, I'm like, okay, all right, they're going to give it to, they want to have a big scene up there on stage where they give it to, for the indigenous actress, and, the first time a Native American actress would win. And so I'd convinced myself that was going to happen. But as Joyce said, Poor Things was obviously the much stronger film than Killers of the Flower Moon, not Scorsese's best. And, Lily did a lot of acting. She looked haunted and tortured and did a lot of acting with her eyes and her expressions. But, there was so much going on with what Emma Stone did. And I think, in some ways they're rewarding the fact that she was so brave. She's a big enough star that she did not have to do all those sex scenes. She could have, I'm sure she could have pushed them to maybe even, modify the script so there wasn't quite that much on screen. And she just attacked it and did it. And, back 20 years ago, that would have been considered an X-rated thing that would have played in porn theaters rather than a mainstream release. So I give her a huge amount of credit. And even though I lost, I ended up missing 5. I'm glad she won in hindsight.
Christopher, any thoughts, Christopher, on this race?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with Joyce said. We talked about this a lot. It felt like Poor Things was the stronger movie throughout, and I think after SAG, I definitely talked myself into Lily more, just because of the way, obviously, the industry was very excited about her throughout the season. The performance was really strong, but we knew it was like Barbie too. With you knew it wasn't going to win these other categories, even if you wanted to talk yourself into it winning costume design. And it was Poor Things was a stronger movie. And that's probably why she won, coupled with this incredible, basically once, I mean, it's her greatest performance, I would say, too, for Emma. Obviously, she won for La La Land, but I think I love that win for La La Land too, personally. But I'm this is a much bigger reach and a much more challenging role. And I think if one of the reasons people were reticent to pick her as well was probably because she had won previously, and she's, would they give her another one so soon after?
They don't care about that.
They don't care about that. And frankly, she would have definitely won. I mean, if that was not a factor,
if she hadn't won for La La Land, she would have everyone would have been she's gonna win this year.
It would have been a complete steamroll for this. And we all thought that, I think, early in the season, and then flipped to Lily, obviously, because she played so well in The Room and won a lot of significant awards, and people were really excited about the movie, especially critics, which is always a tough beat, right? Because you don't want to rely too much on the critics groups who are all over Lily. I thought it was. I mean, I think it'll go down as a very good win. I don't think it's going to age poorly that Emma Stone won an Oscar for Poor Things. Personally, I think it's going to be a performance that people remember. And while I'm sure the discourse will be very loud and probably for Lily stands a little, not pleased with the result, I think it's not going to age like it's Crash or Green Book or something. You know what I mean? It's a great all-time, I think, performance for an actor, and she deserved to win. I also this morning I was what if they tied? They really could. Why? I mean, just give up, do a Critics' Choice Awards basically, and give up and make it a tie. But no, Emma won.
I mean, Critics' Choice won with Emma.
I know. In general, Critics' Choice, not just.
It would have sure been interesting though to see if Lily had decided to stay in supporting. What would have happened?
I mean, that would be the eternal debate now.
Right.
I don't.
If she would have eclipsed Devine.
Yeah, you can.
And it would have been tougher to beat Devine too. So she would have been in another.
I don't know, because Holdovers was stronger than Killers.
Yeah, I think it probably would have shaken out the same way, but she probably would have been second in that category too. And I think, look, I think they're both great performances. I think what Lily does with nuances and subtlety, just the sort of thing I love in a performance. Emma just does some really fun stuff in this role and has some real heart as you see it progress. So I think they're both great performances. And for me with predicting, it was weighing sort of the history of Lily winning against Emma having won recently, and just thinking, I think Lily might have it for those two factors combined. But no, it was really on the strength of the film. I don't say strength of performance in that I think both were strong performances. I think you could have justified either, but Emma's just so good. It was great to see her win. And also, like, it's interesting we're talking about Poor Things being a strong film, which it was, and like reflected in nominations and wins tonight. But such a weird, unusual, outside the box film that you could have easily seen Oscar voters just going, this is a bit too out there for us, and to see it sort of embraced the way it was tonight is really cool, because I would say there aren't really any films like Poor Things that have won 4 Oscars.
Not even close.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's what a lot of people were expecting before it hit theaters in December. You know, obviously had a great festival reaction in the fall, but I think a lot of people were bracing for it to be more divisive amongst the normies, you know, and it wasn't. Like, it's doing it's made over 100 million at the box office and has, you know, great audience reviews too. So I think, you know, it's not like it's a very appealing and human story, even though it's so weird and wacky. But it's a metaphor, and I think, you know, you can really follow Bella's journey and relate to her, even though it's an insane story that's happening on screen.
It is a film that won me over as I was watching it. Like, I started off going, it looks a bit too much here, and then by the end I'm like, oh, what a lovely narrative and story and character arc, and like, you know, I just got gradually pulled into the world.
I was braced for potentially Poor Things to get, even though I'd picked it for costume design and production design. I was braced for it to possibly get screwed, because, you know, I did 2 of these anonymous Oscar ballot interviews, and both of the people I spoke to, I guess I can say they were women. That's not giving too much away. Despised Poor Things. I mean, they were just, you know, this is the most misogynistic, sexist, anti-woman thing I've ever seen. And I'm like, really? I realized that I'm the wrong gender possibly to be judging this, but I thought it was the opposite of that. I thought it was incredibly empowering by the end for women, certainly for Bella. So, but there you go. That's showbiz, and that's where the division came in.
Definitely, it was a polarizing film. Like, I don't think it's going to be your crowd pleaser that everyone's going to love. And let's touch now on that production design costume wins for Poor Things. Really, if you'd asked me a month ago, I would have said that it were Barbie's categories to almost lose, because they're so iconic, the costumes, and particularly production design in Barbie. And it's great to see Poor Things win, but did Barbie get a bit screwed tonight at the Oscars, only winning best song? Like, couldn't win for those great sets, the production design, adapted screenplay. It, like, you know, you feel like it was in the hunt in a few places, and to only win one seems like a bit of a disappointing night for the film that was the sort of moviegoers' film of the year in terms of box office, and definitely was well received critically as well. What do you think? What do you think, Christopher?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was. I just think, like we were talking before about like Flower Moon, it was, as much as I love Barbie, it was clear the industry was not as infatuated with it. I think they loved it enough because it made a lot of money and enough to nominate it for 8 Oscars, but not really enough to have it be a win competitive in any of those categories. I think with a lot of people, like, I had Poor Things for costumes and production design, but I really, really, really wanted to switch to Barbie and costumes, because a lot of people...
You did for like 2 days.
Maybe, no, never did it. I never did. But I was like, I talked about it though, because I was like, oh, a lot of people were like kind of pushing for that. I saw, and I think it would have been a really cool win, obviously. And the fact is the period costumes just almost always are going to have the advantage there, right? And like, so the contemporary costumes of Barbie probably were not going to win. And production design, I think, again, like, Joyce had mentioned this a lot throughout the season, but like the recreations, maybe coming up with something more original, like Poor Things has an advantage over like recreating a lot of the Barbie Dreamhouse stuff, even if it was like incredible, like sets and like really creative. It's not original in that sense. So, you know what I mean? Because it's like based on pre-existing things. And I don't know. So I just was like, I did not expect it to win neither of those. I mean, it would have been nice, certainly. I also think that when you, in the end, as I do love the Billie Eilish song, I think, as we would all agree after watching I'm Just Ken, maybe the wrong song won.
Absolutely.
Which happens a lot with these Oscars, because like we've said a lot, I think, is like if they voted during the show, I think you'd have a lot of different outcomes for these best original song nominees. So.
Yeah, and I've always had a soft spot for "I'm Just Ken." I think it's like one of the real fun comedic beats in the film, and I think just the way that's used is really cool.
It'll also be funny if it had one, because I think a lot of people think Ryan would have gotten an Oscar too, and it's like, no, he didn't write that.
Yes, that's very true. Joyce, any thoughts on Barbie's night just winning Best Song?
No, that's what I expected. I mean, Chris knows that back in the fall, I was calling Barbie Black Panther 2.0. Like, I just had it down for a music category, like, because Black Panther won score, and the design categories, costume and production design. So I had that for months. And then come January, when it was kind of clear that Barbie was just going to pull in nominations and not really convert them into wins, I went off of it and went to Poor Things in the design categories. Still kept it in song, obviously. So it's like, A Star Is Born of the year. It was like a huge hit, very popular, and people had high expectations for its Oscar prospects early in the season, and it just did not pan out that way once it turned into the televised season and the guilds and the industry.
Yeah. Like
I thought maybe they for a while there, I thought that Barbie was going to get adapted, but even though I thought it was ridiculous that it was even nominated for adapted rather than original. But the one category I thought it might have been strongest besides song was one that it didn't even make the shortlist for, which is hair and makeup. I'm still a little shocked it didn't make. Why would it not make the shortlist for hair and makeup? It's that's sort of the whole point of the film. But anyway, you make 1.4 billion globally. There seems to be an inverse relationship between making a lot, except for Oppenheimer, between making a lot of money and getting Oscars. They don't want to they want you to be successful, but they don't want you to be too successful.
Yeah. And there have been box office hits that have won a lot, have won no Oscars, and so it didn't do it. We don't want to act like it got nothing. It won an Oscar tonight. Barbie is now an Oscar-winning film, but yes, the box office does not guarantee a haul of Oscars. What about? Do we think? Just quick, I'm Just Ken. Is that the best song performance in Oscar history?
I don't really remember that. They don't stand out that much, which I think speaks volumes all by itself. I don't really remember that many great performances of songs at the Oscars. When you think of the great performances, you think of the Tony Awards, not the Oscars. The Oscars, the ones from the past are the cringeworthy ones, like the Snow White, the Snow White one back, I guess in the 90s sometime with Rob Lowe. But I'm going to go on in a limb and say, yes, this was the best. This was the best
I can think
performance of a song in Oscar history.
I only thought of two. I mean, this is clearly for me.
Throw me us.
I think it's the best as well. I would say the only two I even thought of that would comp would be like "This Is Me" from Greatest Showman.
It's only because you were there.
But it ruled, and also "Till It Happens to You," which would have won Diane Warren an Oscar if they had voted at the show, because that was a great and powerful performance of a great song at the show. But this was just absolutely unhinged. I cannot believe how good. I still can't believe how good it was.
Oh, it was fabulous.
When we sign off, I'm gonna immediately go watch it again.
I was watching it during commercial breaks.
I was saying, did Kermit sing Rainbow Connection in 1979 or whatever it was? Like that if he did, that could for me be.
Yeah, but that wasn't like a huge production.
No, it wasn't. This is probably the best they've ever done. Please.
A very, it had a big, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes vibes going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I loved all the other Kens when he kissed Scott Evans. So.
And having Slash come out and do a solo.
Yes. I said Slash should come, and he did.
He did. I thought of you immediately when I saw him.
And then he had the La La Land moment for the La La Land Hive with Emma.
Great.
Yeah,
very good.
And I'm sure Greta Gerwig would have loved to be nominated, obviously, for Best Director, but she looked absolutely thrilled to be singing.
She was having the time of her life. And I love the lyrics on the screens.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, the one person who did not seem offended by the fact she didn't get a director nomination was Greta Gerwig.
Yeah, because she's still an Oscar nominee this year. She still got a nomination, and it's always the people who are on the outside who care more about this than the people.
And she can write her own ticket now. I mean, if any boy, she's just bought herself 4 or 5 bombs having this big a hit that she could survive.
Yeah. And it's like, especially in hindsight, we're seeing how other categories played out. She wouldn't have won Best Director if she'd been nominated. So that can also be a bit of like relief. You know, sometimes like, you know, like Ben Affleck may have won Best Director if he'd been nominated for Argo that year. But she, with, you know, Oppenheimer was a pretty tough train to stop, and Nolan was probably one of the safest Oppenheimer categories of the night. Well, let's go around. Is there a particular, let's go with a category that you were particularly interested in, how that panned out, each of you. Would any of you like to start?
I don't know.
Okay, Joyce. You said
I mean, visual effects, just because I was like, any of them could win.
Yeah. Oh, and Godzilla is such an awesome film. Like, it was so great that won an Oscar for that work, and like, it's visual effects are such a part of it, but it wasn't done sort of in a overly Hollywood way. So yeah, that was a really great winner.
It also sucks for Neil Corbell because he had 3 nominations in that category and lost all 3.
Did not win.
So.
I think, you know, documentary short, Matt, you know, where everybody, including me, was picking the ABCs of book banning, and Last Repair Shop won. And I'm really thrilled that it did. I just thought that book banning, it was too timely and, you know, poetically motivated a subject and had to win. But, you know, The Last Repair Shop was a far superior document. And, you know, and it's really meant a lot to Los Angeles Unified School District, where, you know, full disclosure, my wife was an arts teacher for 20 years. So I'm really thrilled to see the arts be recognized like that. And also, I was a little surprised to see in the live action short that you know, the Wes Anderson thing won. That was a little bit, you know, I picked it to win, but I really would have preferred something like The After, which was very powerful, or Red, White, and Blue, which was also an incredibly political. There wasn't much, except for 20 Days in Mariupol, there wasn't really that much politics going on at the Oscars tonight, which surprised me.
That's a good point. While we're on live action short film, like, this is probably something that's been a bit like sort of got lost in the shuffle of Oscars, but Wes Anderson is now an Oscar winner. Another one of the most sort of iconic directors of the past couple of decades is now an Oscar-winning director. He's an Oscar winner. Wes Anderson is an Academy Award winner, Wes Anderson. And as someone who's a huge fan of Wes Anderson and of his films, like, that's just like so exciting for me that he's now an Academy Award winning.
Although, mind you, he couldn't bother showing up.
Yeah, that was very annoying, because I would have loved to see him on the night he wins. He won an Oscar. So it was a big night for Christopher Nolan's big night, but also after a lot of sort of nominations, and, you know, he had the year of the Grand Budapest Hotel, where there were a lot, like, that won a lot of Oscars, but none of the categories that Wes Anderson was nominated in it won. He's now an Oscar winner, which is really cool.
How could you ever have anything better to do than go and accept your Oscar? What would be, I mean, I understand the idea that, you know, you're on set, maybe you're on the other side of the world, but you could still take a weekend off and go do that. I mean, I never quite understood the idea of sorry, he couldn't be here. Unless you're sick, why would you not show up?
Yeah, no, like, agreed. Christopher, is there a category you want to talk about that we haven't touched on yet?
Other than the ones we've touched on, I would say hair and makeup to me was a big one. So I had Maestro most of the year, and then Poor Things won, and then I was like, maybe I should go to Poor Things. Then Maestro ended up losing, and then I went back to Maestro, and obviously it lost. But when when Poor Things won, I was like, oh, Emma's definitely, like Joyce was saying, when she like maybe like I was like, oh, Emma's absolutely winning now. I just knew right then. I was like, man, this is like a slow motion car wreck for people expecting Emma for Lily to win, because I just felt like that was it. And I was really glad Poor Things won. It's not based on like past history and recent history in that category. It felt like a lot different than what they have usually gone for. And especially because most of the makeup is for Willem, who's a supporting character, not as much the focal point, which is like Emma. Not that she also didn't have obviously a lot of hair and makeup. Again, it goes back to like Joyce was saying before, like obviously Maestro is like Flower Moon, not the most popular movie in this bunch. And why would, I guess in the end, why would it have won at all if it was like not super popular, more people were into Poor Things? But I thought that was a really good one. And it was a nice win. They it seemed like they were very excited to have won.
And we still have the lead acting and makeup win matchup with Emma. So
always a good barometer to go with.
Definitely that was a category I was sleeping on, just because Maestro is the front runner, and I'd sort of rested on that. And I only till yesterday started thinking, oh, maybe actually Poor Things will win this, and I didn't end up making that change. But
I had Poor Things like post nominations, and then I talked myself into Maestro last
Me
week,
too.
because I was like looking at the past winners. I'm like, they're all for like lead makeup, and in Poor Things, the makeup is on Willem, not Emma, mostly.
Lead makeup, like a historical figure, right? Like doing that again, you know what I mean? Like all these different boxes it really checked off. And then obviously, though, what it didn't check off was the enthusiasm behind the movie, which I think is important.
Yeah, for sure.
Matt, I want to put a bomber jacket on you with those goggles.
Where'd you get the goggles? Do you get them? Where'd you find them? They're great.
In Los Alamos, right?
Well, yeah.
They're so cool.
They said to everyone watching the Oscars this year to make sure they didn't get blinded by the.
Did you put them on during the Becky G
Oppenheimer
performance?
wins?
The light is great.
Yeah, just be careful when you're watching these Oscars, guys, because you'll be blinded by all those Oppenheimer wins. Oh, it's just, no, keep them on.
You could turn to stone.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, turn to stone. I love it.
Emma Stone.
So good.
As it were.
Oh boy, we're probably ready to move on to our second panel of experts. Is there a last sort of highlight or something that any of you want to talk about?
I'm just Ken.
I'm glad Messi made
just
it
3
there.
words.
Yeah. That's good. Sorry, what were you saying, Joyce? I missed it.
Oh, I'm glad Messi made it there.
Yeah.
That was
yes.
good.
Oh, yes. Very, very lovely. And Ray, did you have something you want to share?
Oh, just that I'm once we get off of here and I finish my review of the show, I'm gonna go watch I'm Just Ken 10 more times too. I'm following Christopher's lead.
Oh, fantastic. And Chris, some last thoughts.
I would just say John Mulaney auditioning to host next year. I thought his bit was
his second
great.
audition, because he already did the Governor's Award.
He did the Governor's Award, and now he did it on TV though for everybody to see. Great stuff. I really hope he gets to host next year. He was so funny. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, thank you so much, Joyce, Ray, and Christopher, for your thoughts, analysis, and breakdown of a very big night in Hollywood. I'd now like to invite, I think we've got Charles Bright, Tony Roots, and Christopher Tsang.
Thanks, Matt. See you guys.
Have I said your surname correctly, Chris? I know I always get this wrong.
What's that?
Have I said your surname correctly?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Oh, great. Okay. So, welcome everyone.
You screwed mine up. You screwed mine up, but that's okay.
Well, I knew I'd get one wrong. Sorry, Ruiz?
Yes.
I'm just going to put my glasses back on and throw to Charlie. What's the big moment you want to speak about tonight, Oscar night? What for you is the big takeaway?
I'm not going to waste time, or at least for right now, talking about last minute changes that I made that I was kicking myself in the testicles for throughout the ceremony. But I got to tell you, the biggest shock for me, and I'm sure it was for quite a few people, was Zone of Interest winning sound. That is such an incredible win, and it's one of my. I think it's one of my personal favorites of the past 20 years. Because when you think about, because I remember seeing Oppenheimer in the theater, especially like in an IMAX theater, and the sound you can feel in your seat as all these different parts are happening with the atomic bomb and just like the lead up to it. But Zone of Interest is very, very specific. It's very methodical, but it utilizes it amazingly. But I never thought that it would actually beat Oppenheimer in that category. And the fact that it did, to me, was like, I mean, they were really watching these movies, and they were really paying attention to a lot of these details, because it just seems so simple that Oppenheimer would win that category. I was even saying after I saw Oppenheimer, I said, if Oppenheimer doesn't win the Oscar for sound, what are we even doing? What's the point of anything anymore? So the fact that it was able to win that, I was extremely surprised. It was probably for me the biggest shock of the night, and pleasant, but very pleasantly surprised at that.
Yeah, and like that was what was I going to say, that Oppenheimer lost a few categories tonight. It didn't sweep across the board, but that was probably the only category where it lost, where it was the front runner going.
Where it was expected to win.
Yeah, with someone that was overtake Oppenheimer in terms of
because like it wasn't favored in like production design or costume design or adapted screenplay. Although part of me was thinking if it's a true sweep, Oppenheimer could definitely take it to screenplay.
Yeah,
but it wasn't on any of that. But and it still performed pretty well.
And Zone of Interest opens with sound.
Mm-hmm.
Which I wonder how important that was. Like, I remember going into the cinema and watching Zone of Interest, and I'm like, has it started yet? I can hear stuff. Have they forgot to turn the projector on? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing that I think is really interesting about it, because I think it also shows that a lot of people, even though people get screeners of things, that opening of that movie really is at the most effective in a movie theater. When when the lights are down and you're just surrounded by darkness, and then you're just hearing all these sounds, and again, I just think that was incredible. And I think that's even part of me was going, maybe I was like, part of me was thinking, oh, maybe Jonathan Glazer has a chance to direct it. Before I even finished that thought in my head, I was like, no, that's not changing.
Incidentally, it also won Best International Film, Zone of Interest. It would incredibly deserve to win there, which means it's one of, am I getting this right? Are there only 3 films that won multiple Oscars tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Things, Oppenheimer,
Oppenheimer on 7, and 2 for Zone of Interest.
Yeah.
So that they're like incredible, and like it was a great moment when they won Best International Film as well. Such a powerful movie. Tony, what do you want to lay on us? What's a category or moment you want to touch on?
Emma Stone.
Yeah.
Because I called it.
Love it.
It would be so easy for me and so petty of me to be boasting right now.
You petty?
But this was a coin flip of this could have gone either way. And I literally said before, I said during the pre-show that I was completely prepared to be wrong. Now that I'm not wrong, I'm clearly a genius.
Tony, were you the one who was saying, I heard, I can't remember if this was you who was saying it in the pre-show. Someone said, and I can't remember who it was, thinking that with the way that Emma and Lily were so neck and neck, that made Sandra a legitimate, a threat to possibly win on that as well. Was that you who said that, or that must have been someone else?
That was not me that said that. I would have been thrilled. I would have been thrilled if Sandra had won, because that's my favorite performance of the year in any category. But no, I just, I was having the same feeling going into tonight that I had with the Best Actor race between Chadwick Boseman and Anthony Hopkins. I had the same feeling going into it, and I was completely prepared to be wrong. I think what's amazing is I've had a few minutes to go back and watch the announcement a couple of times, and if you watch Carey Mulligan is totally prepared to stand up and applaud somebody else. And she actually starts to stand up and then realizes that Emma Stone's name was called. And it's brilliant because I think a lot of people expected it to be Lily. And I was prepared for it to be Lily. So I love, the roar in the auditorium. You can hear it. It's stunning, but clearly, like, the BAFTA thing matters. At least getting in at BAFTA. I think if Lily had gotten in at BAFTA, maybe it would have been different. But the win that made me the happiest was Godzilla -1.
Yeah, that's great.
Because it's like the little engine that could, the little movie that could, that had a fraction of the budget and a fraction of the money to spend, and it goes and it goes that way. I was also really happy for my buddy Chris Bowers winning his first Oscar.
I was so nervous about that one.
I know, I was so happy to be wrong.
What category is Chris Bowers in?
He was the director of The Last Repair Shop, which won live action short. I've had the good fortune documentary short. Thank you. I've had the good fortune to interview Chris a number of times, and we've become buddies. And it was just
I talked to him too. And I actually met his parents at Middleburg because they were out doing the circuit with him because he was promoting the film out there. But I was also good because I had been burned by predicting a Ben Proudfoot Chris Bowers movie back because the conversation and Colette winning.
Oh, very good. Christopher, what would you like us to talk about? What's something that's at the forefront of your mind this Oscar Eve, Nick?
Literally, Charlie and Tony took all my 4 categories.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
But there's a lot.
You can add some comments on those categories if you'd like.
I would love. There's a lot that I would love to elaborate, to explain, maybe why things. And as far as Godzilla, I know everyone was doubting it because it was a franchise, but I think the fact that it didn't get any precursors, but it stands out as a Japanese film. So, and a foreign film never makes any of nothing at VFX, definitely not BAFTA or Critics' Choice. They rarely make it in for that category. So I always said the nomination was the hurdle, and I think that's probably the epitome of just all you need is passion, because it was easily probably the most watched of all of them. And there's, of course, with the increase of international voters, also with Boy and the Heron, it's more. I love how more foreign films were awarded in multiple categories, specifically with the text. It's funny because when it comes to Zone of Interest, I realized recently that Kevin O'Connell was one of the sound mixers on Oppenheimer, which he used to be the biggest loser, probably 21-time loser.
It was 19, I believe, before he finally won.
It was the last time he won for Hacksaw Ridge, which was very surprising. But if he didn't win for that, I would have felt so bad for him, knowing that Oppenheimer was probably early on. Many of us were predicting Oppenheimer until the BAFTAs, and even after the BAFTAs, we thought that would be the one expendable category. So if he lost that, it would have been 0 for 22, and that would have been.
Oh my gosh!
It's the same feeling I feel for Martin Scorsese now that his last 2 films have gone 0 for 20, and But I think something to really make of note here is really, we can brush off now the fact that oh, the last televised precursor is the one that matters the most. Now that Lily Gladstone wasn't able to pull it off, but it's also like when the voting window, whenever that happens, is the most crucial, because this year it was the Thursday right after BAFTA, so people had time to process the BAFTA winners, and maybe a few of them voted for SAG, because there was a long time between Critics' Choice and before SAG that we all thought Lily Gladstone, her chances were practically numbered until she won SAG. And maybe that just wasn't enough time to process that win, and enough time for enough people to award her, combined with Killers being the less stronger movie. So it's just something interesting to look back on now that BAFTA has completely gone a 180 and was not this year, doing better than it probably did 3 years ago when it was fully juried during that COVID year after going 0 for 8 last year.
Yeah, so and that's it. Sometimes award shows will hit, and I think with the timing of when they come out and the difference they make and how close the races are and all those sorts of things can all be factors. We've spent a lot of time talking about the lead actress race because largely that was the surprise of the night, or the one that we were going into tonight particularly uncertain about. But it means we've sort of shortchanged the other acting races, and there's some pretty big moments for the Oscars. First, Cillian Murphy winning for Oppenheimer, a great actor. He's spoken with Gold Derby a number of times for Peaky Blinders when that show is going, and he's so he's been in the industry for a while. He's done TV, he's done film, and pretty special for him to win the Oscar tonight. Does anyone want to comment on that race or his win?
I do want to say that I think it's interesting that what I thought this season was really interesting for Murphy, because he wins the Globe when I think a lot of us were thinking that it was going to be Bradley Cooper, and what surprised me was how quickly he was able, that the support behind him was able to consolidate, and he just ended up running with the exception of Critics' Choice, just ended up running the table in a way that I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying I found it very surprising how quickly that took hold. But I mean, you're right, Maddie. He's incredibly deserving. I was browsing on TV the other day and got to the beginning of the movie 28 Days Later. Which first of all, one of the greatest shots ever in cinema, that shot of that empty London street, which is just the most eerie thing, and him just walking, just trying to figure out what's happening. But yeah, I mean, he's been in blockbusters, he's been in prestige movies. Remember, he was in Ken Loach's Palme d'Or winning movie, the Wind That Shakes the Barley. He's someone who really has had an incredible career, and this totally makes sense for him. It's also kind of astounding because we've seen, especially in Best Actor, the very loud performances win, the very expressive, even ones that I enjoy, like Brendan Fraser in The Whale. That's a very, very expressive, loud performance. Gary Oldman in Darkest Hour, all of those things. And it's so interesting that they went for a performance that is as internal and restrained as Oppenheimer is. And it's wonderful for him, and so major congratulations to him on that.
Yeah, it speaks to the strength of Oppenheimer on one level. Just he played Oppenheimer in the Best Picture winning film. I'm sure that was part of it, but also maybe a little bit to if Paul Giamatti was his biggest competition, who did seem to be in second place by the time he wrapped up predictions. That is also a little bit of and in a beautiful way, that's not your typical Oscar-winning performance either. That's sort of a bit, it's more your sort of comedy,
it's comedic.
It's comedic. It's a comedic performance. So he wasn't going up head to head with a Brendan Fraser maybe in that two-horse sort of race, which which may have aided him as well, which I love because I actually prefer the more nuanced, not showier performances generally, even though I love Brendan's win last year too. So I love that it was Murphy and Giamatti. And again, Giamatti, that was my favorite performance.
I mean,
yes,
I really was, in addition to that, Giamatti's performance of the nominees was my favorite. I was also, I mean, just how irresistible would it be that, 20 years after Giamatti was infamously snubbed for this incredible performance in an Alexander Payne movie to win the Best Actor Oscar for an Alexander Payne movie?
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. What about supporting actor, the foil of Cillian Murphy in the film? Robert Downey Jr. takes that out. It was a pretty foregone conclusion coming into tonight. But just, Iron Man is now an Oscar winner. Does anyone want to comment on, Tony, do you have any thoughts on the Robert Downey Jr. win?
It's funny because, I vividly remember as a 14-year-old going to, this is what a nerd I was, is going to see Chaplin in the movie theater. And I think I was maybe one of 6 people that was in the movie theater at that moment, because it was like a Saturday morning at like 11 a.m. And just going, oh my God, who is this person? And then to go through all the things that he went through and then to come out of the other side as a movie star. And then he said, I thought it was really lovely what he said in his speech is that he needed this performance more than it needed him, than the film needed him. And I think it reminded everybody that he is an actor first and foremost. And I think it's a great coronation. And I really, really hope that it leads to more things, because I think people kind of forgot, because of the whole nature of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It reminded people that Robert Downey Jr. is an actor first and foremost. And I just thought it was lovely. I thought it was lovely what he said. I thought the metaphor about him being like a rescue dog, as a big champion of rescue animals myself, that I thought that metaphor was just beautiful. I thought it was lovely.
Yeah. Now, Christopher, do you think Da'Vine Joy Randolph had the best speech of the night? It was like the first. Was it the best?
It was one of the best.
Yeah.
As far as speeches go, I just love like all those like ones that just shout out like the underdogs. So her speech, Court Jefferson's speech, Jonathan Glazer's speech, the guy from 20 Days in Mariupol. Those were the speeches I really loved, that like gave a shout out to the underrepresented. And it was, I mean, I feel like when the show started like late, it kind of like it all took our energy out, and then it's steadily, and as it like went on, it slowly gained it back up. So as the show went on, it was like more invested, especially of course saving that Best Actress category second to last. So it turned out to be a very like profound. The speeches turned out to be very profound.
Yeah, I'm so glad Da'Vine won, because it's such a great performance. She's like, it's fun. I like it when comedic performances can win as well at the Oscars, but also just it was nice that the Holdovers got to win an Oscar,
I also think, Matt, what you said earlier about subtle performances, I think it is such a subtle performance, and people mistake subtlety for not acting. And what she creates in that film is a fully formed human being, and you see every bit of that character. I just remember, I watch a lot of these films with my parents, who are not the biggest film goers. They aren't obsessed about this the way I am, and so I use their reactions to kind of gauge. And we saw the Holdovers very early in the process, and what was amazing was just how much weeks after we watched the Holdovers was like, God, I cannot stop thinking about Mary. You know, they didn't even know what her name was, but they knew that that character stuck with them, and I think that's why she ran the table for the season.
That scene where she's putting away the baby clothes, just like this, it's an arrow through the heart, and she doesn't, and just like you said, it's not incredibly showy, but you feel every bit of that emotion from her, and she just knocked it out of the park.
So good. And I'm very thankful for her. Without her, there would, like, The Holdovers wouldn't be an Oscar-winning film. And also in the screenplay categories, we saw them able to reward some films that otherwise would have been gone Oscarless tonight, in American Fiction and Anatomy of a Fall. We've seen this in the past sometimes at the Oscars, where the screenplay won't just go with the Best Picture winner. Sometimes they do, but they're not always. And so it's lovely to see those sort of screenplays, which are very well written and tight films, take out that win.
That was one of my mistakes. That was one of my mistakes. Was I mistakenly thought that Oppenheimer was too big to not take screenplay. I slept on that one. I'm thrilled for Cord Jefferson. I thought his speech was also one of the best of the night.
It was.
And kind of both a really good reminder of the power of smaller films, but also a good kind of indictment of big studio films. So to say, hey, you know, instead of taking a risk on one big $200 million film, it was funny to watch him do the math in his head. I thought that was completely charming. I loved it.
I remember when I saw American Fiction back in October, and after it, I said, I was saying to myself, this is a legitimate Oscar contender. Picture nomination is on the table, and if it can get in that, I think it's winning screenplay. Because it just felt like it, and you know, it's you know, especially if you see that movie with other people, you know, see that movie in a theater, and it is incredible. It's one of the reasons why it's great to see comedy movies in the theater. You're feeding off of everybody and that sort of thing. And so I was incredibly happy for him. It was tough for me to be happy for him as a George Mason University graduate, because I can't stand people who graduated from William and Mary, but that's another thing altogether.
Yeah, and it's like, I think that'd have to screenplay race, like, you know, American Fiction, Barbie, Poor Things, Oppenheimer. What's the fifth one?
Zone of Interest.
Yeah. Zone of Interest. Like, what amazing original, like, clever screenplays. Like, you could have almost seen any of those films take it out. Anatomy of a Fall also, like, getting over, like, The Holdovers and Past Lives as well. Like, just sort of some great like,
courtroom drama,
winners, but also losers that you would have liked to see win as well.
Yeah. I mean, a courtroom drama winning original screenplay, one of the oldest forms, one of the oldest genres. The courtroom drama goes back so many decades. I mean, going back centuries into the time of Shakespeare. I mean, The Taming of the Shrew is a courtroom drama. Sorry, I had to show my English teacher there for a second. But to do it in such a way that is so captivating and feels so original. And there was a shot of Milo, of Messi the dog. You know, I thought it was a throwaway moment, but there's a moment where they cut to the dog and clearly some fake paws, you know, doing this. I laughed hysterically.
That's so good.
Which goes into one of the things that was one of the interesting things about the show. I don't feel like this was a perfect show. It was a good show. It took some time to find its footing, as far as I'm concerned. I thought that Kimmel's monologue was okay. I thought he was better towards the second half of the show. I felt like there was some directorial choices that didn't seem to move very well. I'm still not a fan of the cavalcade of actors presenting to the actors. I didn't think that worked. It seemed rushed. It seemed it lacked it lacked enough ass kissing, quite frankly. It just didn't seem to. If you're going to go the full cheese, go the full cheese. But I thought that there were individual moments in the ceremony. I thought the Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger pairing was inspired. And bravo to Michael Keaton for playing along, especially since Michael Keaton wasn't in the god-awful Batman and Robin that Arnold Schwarzenegger was in. But that's another story.
Yeah. What do you think, Christopher? What do you think of the show tonight? How do you think it ran and like worked as an Oscar show?
I pretty much agree with everything Tony said. I'm also glad Messi the dog was there after it recently came out that, you know, a lot of people in the industry were pissed of them using him as a campaign strategy. But
Maybe
yeah,
they should put cute dogs in their movies.
Yeah, like they've done it. This has crossed the line.
And
All
that's-
the
they were just
yeah, like
They were just mad
it. This is where we draw the line as Academy. You can't bring a dog to events. Like, well, the stuff that they've done for like years to like campaign for. You lean into your strengths as a film. You lean into.
They're still bitter.
I mean, in all
They're still
fairness,
bitter
Barbie
about
should have put Ryan Gosling on a leash and have people be allowed to pet him as well.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, sorry,
I
Christopher.
would pay for that.
I volunteer as tribute.
Yeah.
What was I saying? Oh yeah. I thought some of my favorite presenters were Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling. John Cena,
awesome.
I liked his bit. I think he was actually naked. I don't know. And John Mulaney. I mean, if Jimmy Kimmel's not going to host anymore, they should get him right away. Especially after when he hosted the Governor's Awards earlier.
Oh, he was excellent at that.
Very good. Something we haven't touched on yet, Charlie, and I know you're a student and fan of animation. That was one of the tighter races of the night, and we had a little minor upset where The Boy and the Heron defeated Spider-Man across
One of the ones I was kicking myself for because I switched last night to Spider-Man.
Look, this continues the trend of if you're not Toy Story, sequels struggle. Like it is struggle street for a sequel, which I think I actually quite like that we've got such unique and different films. Also, though, even though it wasn't a sequel, winning a brilliant sort of callback to when Spirited Away won, I believe, the second time this category was in existence. So that's lovely. So, what did you think of that?
I loved it. I thought it was great because I love when you can get something, especially with the animation categories. I love when you can get something that's a bit different. So I think it's really cool that that early in the category's history, Wallace and Gromit, a stop motion film, was able to win Best Animated Feature.
Great.
I like those different, and there's we see so much stuff with CG with computer animation, which basically feels like it's the default now. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way it is. But there is something about the magic of hand drawn, especially with Miyazaki specifically, because he's notorious for everything is hand drawn. He's 83 and he's still making these arduously beautiful animated films by hand. And I think that's a wonderful wonderful thing for him. I wish he was there. I'm guessing he just doesn't go to things unless like because he was there when he received his honorary award. What was that, like 10 years ago? I think it was. So he did show up. He did show up for that. But I was surprised not even the other person who was nominated, Toshio Suzuki, who we did an interview with. I was surprised that even he didn't show up because he's the head of the studio he runs the studio that Miyazaki founded.
Yeah. Wow. No, that's awesome. Very good. And any quick comments, Charlie, on the animated short film, The War Is Over winning?
It's definitely for me. I mean, all five of them were visually very striking, I thought, and War is Over definitely stood out that way, and it definitely has. It also has the animal aspect. We always say that we sometimes, I think it was Chris Beecham who noticed that usually with animated short, if there's an animal aspect to it, it'll that usually bodes well for it. And of all the animals it is in this one, it's a pigeon, and I felt sympathy for a pigeon, and I guess that's a testament to it. And it's gorgeously animated. It didn't surprise me, but I knew it was probably either going to be that one or 95 Senses, which I think would have been interesting because that would have given the writer directing team behind Napoleon Dynamite an Academy Award. So that would have been incredible. But I'm still glad.
Which would have made every single one of my students happy, because you want to talk about a film that is.
Do high school students today still know of that movie?
Oh, it's insane.
Oh wow, okay.
Do you know how many vote? Do you know how many vote for Pedro shirts I see worn on a daily basis unironically?
I can only imagine.
Tony, any comments on 20 Days in Mariupol winning Best Documentary Film? We haven't touched on that.
I love 4 out of the 5 documentary films ended up, I think, in my top 20 of the year. I thought this was an amazing year for documentaries, and yet the Oscars still don't know how to give Frederick Wiseman an Oscar nomination. But of the films, I mean, my favorite of the group was The Eternal Memory. I thought that film was, lost my earpiece. I thought that film was astonishing, but I think 20 Days in Mariupol is a brilliant film. And I thought that speech was, in my opinion, the best speech of the night. It was so important to hear what he had to say, and to remind people that what's going on in Ukraine is war crimes are happening on a daily basis in Ukraine, and all you have to do is watch that film. And so I think that film is a great historical record to what's going on in that region of the world, especially following, I thought the Oscars made great use of Alexei Navalny. That we now have kind of these back-to-back wins for this part of the world, because I think it's becoming more a part. It should be a part of all of our worlds.
When he was giving his speech, and when he got to the points where he would pause, he was trying to collect his thoughts. You could hear a pin drop in that auditorium. I was astounded at because they're not clapping or doing anything anyway, but it was this particular brand of silence of just like everyone was hanging on to everyone. But we all were as audience members, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah. No. There's some of the categories we haven't had much chance to talk about yet, and that's partly because we've been talking about Oppenheimer's wins more collectively, is cinematography, editing, and score. Oppenheimer won those 3. It was the front runner to win all of those 3, and I think that speaks to when you've got a best picture front runner that has great editing, cinematography, and score. It just is unless there's something that sort of stands out or really, is it I guess the counter is in sound it lost because Zone of Interest had such a compelling original score that got people's attention and gave them the reason to vote for it over Oppenheimer, where the other 3 categories, I guess there wasn't one alternative that stood out to the degree where people were voting for it over Oppenheimer.
If Zone made cinematography, it could have won.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or score even.
I think I wanted, or score even. Yeah. One of the things I took away from this Oscar ceremony is that, there was a strange mix, a perfect kind of alchemy between kind of the old-fashioned, as the elder person in this group, of what a traditional Oscar thing would be, like Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer, in very many ways, is a throwback to to the Oscars of yore, and yet it is balanced by these kind of more revolutionary wins for Godzilla and for Poor Things and for Zone of Interest, and I think that is exactly, and American Fiction as well. I think that's I think in an older year, I think Oppenheimer probably would have steamrolled and won a lot more of those categories. But I think this is the sweet spot, I think, of populist and critical appeal of all those things coming together into a group of winners that I would say, taken as a whole, is probably one of the finest group of winners. 23 out of these 23 categories, I can't think of a year where I have fewer complaints about. I think these are every single win down the line from top to bottom is going to age very, very well. I think this was an inspired year of movies.
And I think that it's a good spot to start to sort of land this plane. Charlie, is there any sort of lessons or things you've taken from this year's Oscars ceremony?
Well, I would say just go with BAFTA, but we know that next year it's all going to come down to SAG. It's just going to alternate at this point.
It'll be a different awards that they all come next year.
Yeah. So that's out the window. And I'm on the same page as Tony. I was looking at this list of winners, and only one of them really bugged me, and that's and I'll take that as a win. By the way, it was live action short that did it.
Wes Anderson.
I love Wes Anderson. Here's the thing: I love Wes Anderson, but I found that short incredibly annoying. I was shouting at my TV, "Don't talk about it, show it."
That's good.
I really did like all of these, and all of these movies I also associate with great theater going experiences. Seeing Oppenheimer and seeing Oppenheimer in IMAX. I waited so long to buy my tickets. The nearest place that didn't have that was only front row seating for an IMAX was like 45 minutes away from me in Manassas. But I still went there, and I'm glad I did, because it was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy about that. Poor Things was an incredible theater experience. Zone of Interest also. Holdovers. These are great movies, and unlike last year, I'm really glad we got a bit more spreading, especially in those top categories, because it was whether or not I thought that some things were deserving for Everything Everywhere last year, it felt when the ceremony was over and I'm looking at the winners list and I see picture, director, actress, and supporting actress, screenplay, I'm just like, this is a bit much. This one just felt really good, and I think these are, like Tony said, I think these are winners that are going to age extremely well.
Yeah, Christopher, what are your final thoughts?
I am never predicting an animated sequel ever again.
Well, Toy Story 5, I wouldn't like to say.
Even if Toy Story 5 comes out, I'll probably not predict that either.
Fair enough.
But yeah, and it's weird because Boy and the Heron, I don't think had a single guild win. The only industry precursor it had was BAFTA and Globe. And Spider-Verse, when PGA swept the Annies, I think that's probably the first time a film like that lost. So it just shows. But this has been. I always want to speak out for international films, and this year, has been a wonderful year for that, and it's been reflected in the winners. And like everyone else has said, it's balanced with the biggest blockbuster, Oppenheimer, who is also probably the first blockbuster win in a while that hasn't had a festival run in almost 20 years.
Well, last year you had Everything Everywhere, which was a big blockbuster hit, and it did debut at South by Southwest, but
yeah. So
I think we're talking about the Titanic, Forrest Gump, that type of blockbuster.
Or even
Everything
like-
everywhere is still.
Yeah,
Not
or
all
even, like,
blockbusters are equal.
or even like The Departed,
Yeah.
something like that. So, yeah, this is honestly for what has been like a slow, very like a slow award season that like kind of dragged a bit because we kind of knew like what nominations would be where. There weren't a lot of surprises during Oscar nominations morning. The winners were really inspired, and it's definitely probably my favorite group of winners in a long time. Like even and probably even counting the Parasite year. So yeah.
Well, that's
I would say that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just a huge. I hope for the future as the Academy keeps like expanding and keep adding more international voters. I hope more international films can get recognized in other categories because I don't know the count yet, but there's probably like very few categories where an international film has never won. So.
Yes. Now I can just I'll announce it's been published already, but I can announce the winners of our Gold Derby prediction competition. Orphan Tears got 23 for 23, 100% accuracy at Gold Derbies. That's pretty cool. And in second place, Question Mark 64 also got 23 out of 23. You can sort of wager some more points on a few categories, which is what got Orphan Tears the win. And amongst us, our editorial staff at Gold Derby, the winners we had Denton Davidson, Marcus James Dixon, and Rob LaCuria get 19 from 23 categories, with Charles, yourself, me, Ray, and Christopher Rosen following up at 78%. So I don't know.
I'm just going to say I also got 19 of 23.
Well, congratulations, Tony. Very good. Very well done. And what did you get, Christopher?
I got 18. I should have.
8.
I should have stuck with Poor Things and Makeup.
Yeah. Oh well. Let me just quickly
that's what I
check
was thinking
those.
myself about too.
Yeah, let me just quickly check what happened tonight at the Oscars again. Check those Oscar results. Oh yes, we had a rich night for Poor Things. Ken steals the show, but Billy wins for Barbie, and Christopher Nolan. Oppenheimer exploding at the Oscars. There are big headlines from the night. And I'd like to thank everyone who's been watching this live web show. And thank you for everyone who's contributed, from Joyce, Ray, Christopher, Charles, Tony, and our other Christopher. Thank you so much. And thank you to Keith and the team producing the show. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next year for the Oscars.
I swear to God, Matt, you're looking like a Batman villain.